My friend, thanks for joining. This one is lesson number 7. So if you check the syllabus of Infrastructure Security Consultant course, we are here. API design. Today is a tough conversation. Is massive. I will try to fly because the idea is not to just have a long lesson, is to give you the right food for thought. So you need to think as an attacker always. And the first consideration is API connectivity straight from a client to a backend is a no, no, no. An API gateway that is front facing, is having the CDN, web application firewall rules created based on Swagger file. So each version of API can have a Swagger file that can loaded and you have a definition of which method is allowed, what you expect from each parameter. That's really important. So when you talk about API, you need to think and zoom out on which API. Because if you have a service running on cloud, the cloud underneath is having API management. So there is a layer of depth also in terms of which API you are referring. So the access to all these API is extremely important. What is underrated is that sometimes can happen that incident response doesn't have enough visibility into API, and that is wrong. And could come from these end-to-end API calls without the gateway as well. So if you fix the gateway, you have a place where to tap into the incident response, your SIEM, your big data lake, whatever you do use for your incident response, and have that visibility. Don't forget how whatever website, mobile, is always generating API. But API are not an easy conversation because if you tell me that is an API, security wise, not always give me the big picture. So you are having REST API and WebSocket API. But on top of that, you need also to have a specific thinking about GraphQL API. So RESTful API are the really chatty and verbose for each call. GraphQL um, give you the opportunity to use a query language and create complex query. One of the biggest example of that in commercial terms is the Azure GraphQL API, where you have a front facing that connect to all other API. That is the design that you should think of, the capabilities to do it, but that query language change the threat model as well. So you need to consider that because study only API doesn't help you. You need to think that the WebSocket API bypass, for example, content security policy, are having specific WebSocket security consideration. Another consideration I take here, for example, the complexity of APG for the hybrid design. These layers are also capable to do application routing, and they are capable to let services to talk between private and public API, and so it's actually the 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 traffic guard of all traffic, and you don't want by mistake to let something on cloud to have a lateral move into on-prem. So the hybrid consideration of your design of your gateway is extremely massively important. I just tell you something that you know for sure. Always do the reference if you want a checklist because you want to be sure to have covered. REST security is a big topic. You have on top of API security top 10. That is not do security at all because it's just the top. So you need to do your own threat modeling. You need to consider your own specific of your application, what you are doing, and what is happening if you get exploited. Don't forget that an API gateway is also adding a benefit because you could have two API gateway talking to each other doing mutual TLS. That is going to give you the capability to recognize the endpoint that is calling you, avoiding an attacker to poke you directly. So that is another thing that you should consider in why you need an API gateway. Why it's so important. But the API gateway is in any product that you are having. When you are evaluating a product, ask the documentation, get the API documentation. It's the best way to evaluate the product. You want to know what is under the bonnet. So don't forget that there are solid project open source like Kong, can be installed on cloud, on-prem. You need to make your own consideration in terms of redundancy, secure it as well. It's not just a small detail. You need to always think about the reliability engineering as well, but you have tons of plugins that let you, for example, to link it to your Vault, OpenID Connect. You have everything you can dream of. About GraphQL, spend your time, study that because it's specific. It's not something hacking GraphQL API can be different than other type of API. You have some pro and cons as everything. What I'm trying to suggest is training wise, what I do suggest is check Postman is having a student program that let you to have access to a sort of academy, and there you have whatever you can dream of API. So if you want to study there, is brilliant. On top of that, in the meantime, you work on web on the Portswigger Web Academy because that will give you all overview of all web application, also with specific, for example, to WebSocket security. I think when you couple this training between Postman, that, the OWASP documentation, you are starting to have a clear picture to take the documentation of a cloud service provider of whatever product and be confident. Remember the Swagger file, it's extremely nice to create rules on the fly without having the hassle that you can have with a web app at the time that you have, for example, the learning mode. So if somebody, in the meantime, you are presenting the fact to protect also with a WAF, if somebody is pushing you away, trying to understand if the reason is a bad experience with a web application firewall and explain that is not time consuming on that. So I hope I gave you an overview. As I told you, you can spend years to study API. Whatever you are having, also in pipeline terms, is API. Don't forget that an attack to your pipeline is one of the most juicy things that you can dream of. And so having an API gateway for your security platform, your pipeline, and have an onboarding automated process where you know whatever, having the gateway well connected with the vault is just doing stuff like it should. You'll not find many stressing about it. And that is the probably portion of delivering stuff, and you can find conversation where, for example, the backend API, an API endpoint is really close to something that can help lateral move internally. So consider always this kind of stuff. Think with your own brain. do the UML flow as I teach you before in the other lesson and see the big picture. Don't forget to use your own judgment and not just swallow documentation and not use your brain. So if you get a vendor is giving you a security product, is using JWT, you know the vulnerability around it. It doesn't use Vault, doesn't have rotation. Those are the way to challenge vendors also to do better their own product. And so don't just assume that the product security was followed by their own R&D. You want to know what you are installing, you want to know how it's handling, and you want to know which kind of exposure. API in attack surface is sometimes even out of the picture of the threat modeling because you see web application with just the logical elements trying to be 100% sure that you zoom that and you zoom also the underneath API in terms of management. Don't focus only on the fact that it's north-south is having some sort of, because it's also east-west. And so you'll find uh, more often API on top of the list. If you want to be a good infrastructure architect, consultant, a security specialist, a bug bounty, especially bug bounty is living on API. And so it's a topic that worth your time. Spend it. It will be a really good one. So next lesson after the API will be about CDN design. And it somehow is anyway everything connected because as I told you and as you see, the CDN is a component also of all these gateways all the time. So we will zoom in. Subscribe the YouTube channel, you'll get notified when a new lesson is available. I hope you enjoyed. I did my best to keep it short and give you the right elements to see the big picture. Use your own brain. Okay? Take it easy. Cheers. Thanks for listening.